Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Paul Boerger. Hey, Paul.
Hi, Dr. Kimberly.
And he is calling in from this beautiful log cabin that he lives in Colorado. So if you're seeing the video part, oh, it's just gorgeous. So what a lucky man to be able to live there.
Hmm. Yeah, it's kind of ironic. It's like how I ended up here. It was like, believe it or not, it was shaped by a song when I'm for my youth.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh.
I think we want to get into that story soon, but before we do, I'm going to read your bio just so people know who you are, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So Paul Boerger has been leading engineering teams for over 37 years successfully. He has delivered over 100 innovations in products and services, which demanded the evolution to leadership mastery. Today, Paul shares that knowledge with tomorrow's leaders through the pages of The Alchemist Way, which is his book. All right, Paul, start wherever you want. We'd love to hear the story about the house or the wherever you want to start.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, maybe it's the story of the Alchemist Way, perhaps. It actually stemmed from two key events. And the last event was May 10th of 2024. I was attending my daughter Alexa's college graduation. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering on May 10th. And the irony of that is I had graduated exactly 37 years earlier, May 10th, 1987. And so I got really nostalgic. I got really introspective, as I was reflecting on this day. And then I was taking a look back at where I was at 22-year-old, standing on a similar stage, gripping my degree. It's my freshly minted degree, standing between my parents and awkwardly taking photos. And realizing it's like I didn't really have much of a plan for life. I grew up in the Midwest, financed my own education. And anyway, I didn't exactly know where to go. But that was shaped by a song I was remembering by REO Speedwagon when they got caught in a Rocky Mountain snowstorm and they wrote the song Riding a Storm Out. So the only vision I was chasing at the time was someday I'm going to live in a high mountain lake in a tiny A-frame cabin. Um, and I'm going to endure a Rocky Mountain snowstorm while listening to REO Speedwagon's Riding a Storm Out. So you can see it's not necessarily an A-frame, but it's a log cabin, and it's we've endured many a Rocky Mountain snowstorms here. So
That's
I
all.
guess that's the story of how I got here.
Got it. And then you were in music yourself early on. So tell me about that.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd have to say it was the highest paid job. It was like growing up in the Midwest I had was my last 2 years of college. I played in a country rock and 50s band. I never played in one of those before, but this band had been around about 15 years and needed a lead guitar, and I auditioned for it. And to my chagrin and surprise, I got it. And anyway, that's all part of the story, I guess. Music was probably one of my first passions.
Mhm. Yeah, and you can learn a lot actually from, learning music from the decade before also.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
So I remember when I was in college, I was a DJ at our Christian radio station, and there was an opportunity to be a DJ at a local non-Christian station nearby, and so I applied for it. And but before, while I was waiting to see if I was going to get it, I was listening to it was from people older than me. So I was listening to all the older songs, trying to learn them, trying to see, what songs so that I would recognize them when I would play them on the radio station. So,
I love that. Awesome.
so yeah, we can
So
learn
how
a
many years were you a DJ?
Oh, just during college. It
Just during
was
college.
just a fun thing to do.
I love it.
So, yeah, but so you started out in the band, but then
Hmm.
you went to college, you got your degree. And
Yeah.
like you said, you're sitting there like with no plan. Well, when did some plan start to come to fruition?
Wh- It was on that May 10th. I was like, now what? Right? It's like I've been working so hard trying to get this degree. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to start that dream of going to Colorado. So I moved to Colorado with only $60 in my pocket. And I had family out here at the time. And then I went ahead and got my very first job 3 weeks later for a small robotics company, Apogee Robotics. And they did automatic guided vehicle systems. So I went straight into electrical engineering job with them, and I loved it. I fell in love with all things electromechanical, automatic guided vehicle systems, industrial automation. It just turned my crank. So that's where I really found my passion for not only technology, but also leadership in technology.
Wow. So, when I think of robotics, I think of, those arms that are moving things on the
Mhm.
factory floor and things like that, which sounds like really fun to work with something like that. So what would your job be like? What is your part in making all that happen?
Oh, so it started out in industrial automation and design. So these little robots were little cars that drove on, 3 types of guide path typically. So they were buried wire, they had optical, also magnetic. And they did everything from deliver mail to driverless forklifts that drove around inside of some of the dark rooms, very dangerous places. So they'd carry everything from just letters and envelopes all the way up to 2 tons worth of, coils and even jeans for Levi's. So it was really a neat first job out of college.
Yeah, really, really it is. And then you went on to your bio said 100 innovations. So what
Yep.
other things did you work on?
Well, one of the most interesting things, I guess, is probably right in front of you. If you got a mouse, and if you were to turn that mouse over, and if it doesn't have that really nasty track roller ball at the bottom, that came out of our team in the late 90s. We productized that, yeah, it's out of HP Labs for a much higher precision version of that optical navigation system for a different product. But we kind of dumbed it down, spun it off, licensed it to Microsoft, and they made the optical mouse ubiquitous.
Wow, that's amazing. And what other things did you invent? There's 100 is a lot.
Oh yeah, no, it's actually, but well, I got a 45-second slides if you wanted to see just a whole bunch of those. So anything from the robotics brought me into all things electromechanical type systems. So anything that involved propulsion, batteries, battery charging, um, things that moved, arms, levers, lifts, you name it, conveyors. We interfaced absolutely everything. Then I went into PC peripheral products. So went into data storage specifically, tape drives, floppy drives, all those kind of data storage, magnetic type products. Then I went into um, electro-optical type of solutions and innovations in that, electrochemical type of solutions, consumer electronics after that. Then I went to data storage. I was the principal architect on 7 generations of HP Media Smart Data Vault and home server products. Then from there went into electrochemical impedance spectroscopy, and then into several other great technologies. And today I'm managing a group of firmware engineers out of Golden, Colorado, that we do uh, security, access, and control systems.
Wow. So when you were doing that, you were thinking out of the box because you guys were creating new things.
Yeah.
There's some jobs where you're just doing the same thing over and over and you just get good at it and you keep doing that same thing. But in your case, you're creating new things all the time. So what kind of brain, what kind of mind, what kind of thoughts do you have to create something that isn't available right now?
Well, here's a classic example. So we had just brought out HP's very first segue into home entertainment with the Digital Entertainment Center. I championed that cause. I wanted to bring HP out of the home office and into the living room and connect to the biggest display in the house. And then what happened was when Compaq merged, they said, Paul, we really don't want to play in that space anymore, but we love the product. Best Buy loved it. Circuit City loved it. But they said, we got this new technology. It's up in Corvallis, Oregon. So I flew up there, and they were really excited to see it. It was a group of chemists, and they took this little green blob and they put it on top of a slide. They held it over a flame of a Bunsen burner, and it turned from this ominous, kind of ominous green into a black. And I said, "Oh, well, what did I just see?" And they said, "Well, Paul, that's a thermochromic reaction." And they went through and kind of explained the chemistry behind it. And I was like, "Cool. What do we do with that, right?" And they said, well, we want to take this cosmic goo. Here's a vision. And we want to smear it on top of a CD or DVD. And then using the same laser that we used. Remember, we used to do those mix lists, for our friends and family. And you're like, here, play these tunes. And then you flip it over. And using that same laser, we would actually write on this. And that innovation was called LightScribe. And anyway, so I managed that team. Half my team was in Corvallis at the time, and the other half of the team was here in Northern Colorado. So that was a great project.
Mm.
But like I
You-
said, all of a sudden you see some new technology. Even with HP's like going into the living room, it's like, and even our home server product, Microsoft approached us and said, "Hey, we got this idea for the home server." It's like, "You guys want to be our hardware partner?" And anyway, this I ended up architecting them all the hardware on that side. So
All right. And you said a word that sparked a question for me. Teams. In order to create something like that, you really have to have collaboration, people working together, people having the same goal and seeing the vision.
you
So,
got it.
what are some key things about leadership that allows that to happen?
That is a great question because some of these projects that we had, they were the first time IoT ecosystems. I had to have servers up in the cloud communicating down through gateways, different connectivity type solutions into the devices, and then of course delivering value as a connected device, which now we're used to calling the Internet of Things. But back then, trying to explain this to the team to get them, first of all, to understand what it is. So I had to articulate it beautifully. And that's where I talk about the 3 C's of goal setting. It's absolutely crucial, not only how you state the goal, um, how you articulate it, but also how you infuse that with emotion in order to make sure that it's going to be able to pull you through. And then the second thing, which is just huge, is the beliefs. You got to get the team, not only yourself to believe in it, but the team to believe in it. Because some of these were innovations that had never been done before. Like even I talked about navigating on paper. Is there really enough spatial information on paper for us to construct this optical navigation system? And we had to get the team to really believe that we were going to be able to do this. And so those are probably some of the bigger ones. And then the rest of which are broken down into 6 core tenets of leadership. And one thing about leadership that we all learned, there's lots of different shapes and styles and strengths and behaviors and passions for leaders. But the one thing that all leaders don't agree on a lot, but the one thing we all agree on is that before you can ever lead someone or others, you have to first lead yourself. And I think that one is absolutely crucial and foundational. And that's what distinguishes The Alchemist Way, I think, from almost any other leadership books, because it really is transformational and it starts with you.
Mhm. And it always does, doesn't it? It
Yep.
always has to
Always.
start with you. You have a
Yep.
problem in your marriage, it starts with you. You have a problem at work, it starts with you. It always starts with you, no matter what, even though we want to blame it on somebody or something else sometimes.
Hmm.
So I'm going to go back to that belief piece. So, you know, people talk about faith, having faith. So you're really
Hmm.
creating not just belief, but faith that this is worth their time, their energy, their emotions. So how do you grab that? How do you help them get there when something doesn't exist and it's like, yes, it's going to work.
That's why only 8% of, I think, New Year's resolutions are kept, is a large part of this. You can set the goal and you can articulate it, and you can have a great emotion for it. But here's the thing, when it comes to belief, we've got like this natural enemy built inside of us. We've got somewhere between 12 and 60,000 thoughts per day running through our heads. 85% of those are negative, over 90% are repetitive.
Mhm.
So when that narrative kicks in, this is where we have to come up with a belief. The belief in getting not just yourself, but also your team. So that's where you have to create the whole new narrative, one of which to replace some of those negative thoughts. And so I talk about that, you know, in quite a bit of detail. It's like in the book. And like you said, faith is, well, how does that go with faith is um, things hoped for or something like that. Anyway, it'll come to me in a
Hopeful,
second,
but
but
on
it's like,
teams. These are
we
on
can quote
things
that,
are
but you're
hoped
absolutely
for.
correct. When you believe in it, it unlocks the faith.
Mhm. So beautiful. And then what are some of the other things you teach in your book? You were talking about the 6 tenets and
Mm.
like, and there's so many leaders with so many ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, then, of course, the next one is character. So when we talk about beliefs, you know, um, what I found is you touched on this. So you can have the great goal. You can have beliefs that are actually building for that, and faith and belief are the alchemical catalyst for turning that vision into reality. But the character is the foundational bedrock of attainment. And what I stated in the book, what is character? Well, it starts with the ability to keep a promise to yourself and that is when I don't know if you read the Four Agreements, but I love the way he says that. Be impeccable with your word. And because everything is built on top of this, and I showed this little pyramid inside of there because it starts with, okay, trust and respect for the individual. Okay, that starts with character. Without character, I can't build that first foundation. Then we get to open and honest communications. And at the peak of the pyramid, we get achieving common objectives through teamwork. And whether you're in a family, you're in a community, you're in a church, or a team, it all starts with the character. And it starts with, of course, your ability then to keep that promise to yourself. And I learned that character isn't just something you're born with, it's something you forge, kind of like steel in a furnace. It's shaped by the heat of challenges and the hammering of tough decisions and the tempering of lessons, that are learned through experience. And it just comes right back to be impeccable with your word. Keep that promise to yourself is where it starts. And then, of course, keep your promise to others.
When you talk about character, sometimes we find ourselves either at work, at home, so sometimes when we can't change things, in other places where our character is not in alignment with other people's characters. If we even use a work example, you are going forward, you have the faith, you're doing this project, and there's some, doubting Thomas over here that, he's, you don't know it, but he's got family issues at home and he's kind of acting up over here. So what do you do when you have a group like that? Do you do something to bring them in? Do you say, okay, you're not part of the group? How do you do your life, your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the first thing I always do is when I meet with a new team, and I always do go through my values. So, for example, I've inherited several, research and development projects. I inherit groups of folks on my team, and the first thing I do is go through a full list. I first talk to them about, what's their style, what's their best day at work, how long they've been, tell me more about it, right? And then I always go through my values, and the very first of which, I value trust and respect for the individual, open and honest communications, then achieving common objectives through teamwork. Then, of course, I love diversity on the team. I love innovation, experimenting, and take the risk. And I go through a series of these things. And so I set the expectation up front. Now, when a team doesn't play well together, the first thing I have to do is approach and say, well, gosh, here's an observation. And we've seen this multiple times. And it's like, in the spirit of open and honest communications, trust and respect for the individual, and achieving common objectives through teamwork, I need you to take a look at the way we're looking at this. And then I'll sometimes draw graphs on a board and kind of show them where the behaviors and the results are mapping. And that way they get a really good feel for that. And we've had to do that in several different teams. Or sometimes you bring in a new person that's just not quite working out because we are missing that character component.
Mhm.
And that does manifest both in results and also in behaviors. And usually between the two, we can kind of shape it enough where we can build a good team. So that's one thing I've had a really good reputation for in the past is building really good, solid, strong teams.
Yeah. So many people are going to want to read this book because
It is
even
very
when they're good at
digestible.
building teams, you need more ideas for building teams.
There you go.
So what are the other tenets? We just talk about each one a little bit so we know what they are.
Oh, okay. Well, the next of which is every leader has to bring vitality. And vitality is the energy that you bring. So, you can have the goal, you can have the beliefs, you can have the character, but having that vitality is absolutely crucial. And what that forces, that's a forcing function that will make you prioritize health above all else as you take a look at your diet, exercise, nutrition, and of course, which is something I didn't learn until my later years, is proper rest
Mhm.
because vitality always starts with physiology. And that's where I got in trouble in the past. Leading teams, sometimes we were working too many hours, and the first thing that went out the window was my exercise or my diet. And I tell you, I played havoc on my ability to maintain that goal, made it very difficult to attain that. But you can't just look at vitality as just the physical energy. It's also that emotional resilience that we bring to every challenge, every bump, every setback, and twist and turn in the road. So it's really crucial to attainment.
Yeah, it really is. And there's more and more research out about sleep now. It's one of the top priorities of all the priorities is having sleep. So that is so important. And I know there's companies that, they will actually implement these wellness programs because I was actually looking at that. My son is a personal trainer. So we are looking at doing that with companies where they have these challenges. Now it's not all the time because you got to work sometime, but they'll have this like 6 weeks challenge where and you make it fun with teams or whatever. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need that fun piece because it's not always fun to eat spinach every day. But we know our bodies need green things. So, sometimes it does help to make things more fun.
I totally agree with that. And I love and I applaud employers that do that. In fact, I just started a routine with my employer and they said, hey, let's start counting steps and we're going to send you a scale and I want you to weigh in every day.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, at this age, it's probably a good thing. So, so I love that. And to your point, it's like, and when you got a support group helping you out,
Mhm.
helping to set the goals and get that consistency that you need, it's like that's crucial.
For sure. And I was wondering, is one of your tenants or one of the things you use measuring things? Because I think in order to know where you're at, first of all, you have to figure out where you're at, but then you have to measure things to see where you're going and if you're getting there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's where the next tenant really comes in. And so, any guesses what that one might be? It's the one that gives us the consistency that we need. And it's the consistency of habit. And I've got a whole section just dedicated to what we do with our morning routines and how our routine. So the routine is what? It's a constellation of habits. Where, whoops, sorry. You got habit one plus habit two plus habit three, the things that we do every day. And this book will actually help you look at that very critically. Take a look at your daily habits, that constellation, which turns your routine. And then weekly, we want to revisit that just to make sure that our habits are giving us regular progress towards our goal. Also, to feed our vitality machine too. And that's where the morning routines are just absolutely critical because every great CEO, every great entrepreneur, every great professional athlete, there's one thing they all have in common, and that is their commitment to their morning routine. And once I did that and I got that consistency and I really started looking at that and how that feeds the goals and getting the team consistent, regular habits, cadence of routines, as well as what do you call those ceremonies, as well as artifacts in the process and measurements, that's where we start seeing real progress. That's where the magic happens.
Exactly. And I actually was just talking to a life coach who is also a personal trainer today. And we were talking about how, with the brain, you want to integrate the brain and the body with everything because when you integrate the body, it helps things stick. And, we talked about if you have a physical thing you do for that habit that starts that habit, it's like, okay, when I pat my thigh in the morning, that means it's time to do something. In other words, you're actually putting a physical movement to it so your body remembers. So your body all of a sudden goes, hey, I'm supposed to be doing this. And then you tell yourself, you hear yourself say, I'm about to do this. And then you do it. There's something about integrating all those things that helps the habit stick more than if you just say, okay, what's my schedule? What do I do? It's just automated, it's automatic.
Absolutely. In fact, I don't know if I've got a section in the book it's just dedicated to that. It's called the winner's effect. And that's why Super Bowl teams just keep winning Super Bowls because it's like there is a neural pathway that is set that long-term achievement is like strengthen like a muscle and a pathway that will fix your course. And I think that is just that's awesome. I agree with that. And then there's a dopamine, there is a chemical release. It's like that occurs with that effect, and that people get addicted to that. I
Mhm.
know I have. It's like, when things finally work out.
Are you willing to share any of your morning routine or some things you do that have been very successful for you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I've got well, every morning I get up, the first thing I do is pour a big glass of water with 2 tablespoons of lemon juice in it and cayenne pepper on top. Sometimes a splash of sea salt. I drink that down and then I go straight to the coffee pot, which is my elixir. Because after all, not a lot happens without coffee. I've had coffee every day of my life since I was 12 years old. So it's like that's the way that those all start. And then I try to get centered for the day. And I will prioritize, saying the top three things that I want to do. Sometimes to get myself in a good mental state, and then I'll try to do a 90-minute pulse with my coffee. So 90 minutes of just pulse of whatever I really want to get done. For me, it's a work pulse. Or for example, when I was writing this book, it was writing this book pulse. And you can do so much, and quite honestly, it's makes you incredibly effective. And then, of course, I got to walk Xander, so we go out there among the pines, and I get about, on average, about 90 to, I think 2024 averaged about 9,300 steps a day. And also, the daylight helped me sleep better. And then at my age, of course, I turned 60 last May. So it's like, so I do a little strength training every day, not so much just to conquer the gym per se, but sometimes just to conquer a flight of stairs or to, open a jar of pickles without having to call for backup. So I do a little bit of that every single day. I try to grow every day, try to connect with people every day, and the rest of which just kind of goes into those habits. So.
Yeah. And I lost count. Do we have one more tenant or did we talk about them?
Well, there is one more tenet, and that was, and that is the tenet of the heart of the leader. And like, have you ever, for example, reached a goal and all of a sudden you felt empty inside? So of those 100 innovations, not all of them like felt really good. Did you ever make a compromise in the process? We compromised a character, we rounded a corner, we left someone behind, or we accidentally hurt someone in the process. And sometimes when it comes to the heart, it's like in the infamous words of the Beatles, love is all you need. You got to bring that to the table. Now, you talked about your Christian background, which I just love. I ran into a person years ago that claimed to have met, actually, he was one of the most cynical people I ever met, but he claimed to have met Mother Teresa of Calcutta.
Mhm.
And I was like, so what'd you say? And he asked her one question, and it was just kind of a negative question. But he said, with all this stuff going wrong in the world, he said, what gives you hope for the future of humanity? And her response was profoundly beautiful. She said, empathy and compassion. As long as humanity has those two things, empathy and compassion, then that gives me light for the salvation of humanity. And ever since that conversation, that shaped me. I brought that into my leadership journey. Then, of course, several others under the inspirational leadership of John Maxwell of being the servant leader. If you don't have the heart to serve, you don't have the heart to lead. And I thought one of the ways you can really look at that is, I don't know if you've ever played sports with guys before, gone on a golf course. You got this one guy that's always like, calling himself names and really not being very kind of compassionate to himself, or playing basketball. And then he starts throwing elbows and stuff. And but it comes down to the empathy and compassion and bringing your heart to the game. And sometimes you gotta, as a manager, you gotta put down the PowerPoint slide and really just ask them. So, how is your day going?
Mhm.
And what I found is, people don't care about what you know. They don't care about your accomplishments until they know how much you care. And caring is the currency, and the heart is the currency, especially when it comes to leadership.
Yeah. So if people wanted to connect with you and also get your book, where do they find you?
Oh, well, it's on Amazon. It's called the alchemistway.com. Also, you can go to paulboerger.com, either paul-burger.com or Paul-Burger or just paulboerger.com. And that's Boerger. And there's links right there that'll take you right to the Amazon page. So it's available both in paperback as well as Kindle. Now, it's only been out now for, 30, 40 days, maybe. I think it launched in late February. So um, and we had a good publisher, and so I had a really good response. And a lot of folks are really appreciating this. So if you know an aspirational leader, a young leader, actually, it's good for leadership at any stage. Or if you've ever felt like you got imposter syndrome, this will bring you the confidence that you need to step into it.
Mhm.
Because
Well,
after all, we
yeah,
are all leaders. So
that's what I was thinking. I think it would be helpful for anyone because we're all, like you said, we're leading ourselves, but you don't know who you're leading. There's always people watching, even if it's kids, even if it's your neighbor, or, everyone's watching you to see what you're going to do and how are you going to lead yourself and what kind of example are you going to be?
exactly. Yeah. And sometimes some of us get thrust into it too. Like I've also gotten a book. It's like, in my late teens, I've had a job since I was 12 years old, but in my late teens, all of a sudden leadership positions started coming to me, whether I wanted them or not. And I was like, Are you sure about that? You want me to lead this? I don't know. You got to check your judgment, right? But that happens. And then also, you mentioned on one of your podcasts that you're a single parent. I as well. I raised my daughter, Alexis, since she was 5 years old as a single dad. And so when she got her degree in mechanical and aerospace engineering, and now she's pursuing her master's, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's like I'm just an annoyingly proud dad. But you find yourself having to even lead your kids because it's ever try to get them to influence them without having to bribe them with candy or something like that. It challenges you, and that actually gets you. It really hones those skills of influence.
Mhm. Yeah, which made me have a thought of, you don't wait until you're a leader or put into a place of leadership to start developing your leadership skills. We should be
Exactly.
developing to be the best person we can be, that best human being we can be every day with all the tools we have available to us.
Exactly. And because I will say it's like, to lead others, you still have to lead yourself first. And so if you want better health, lead it. You want more wealth, lead it. You want better relationships, lead it. And the Alchemist Way is just a talking about how we take all of those challenges and all of those struggles and turn them into gold in the end. Because that's really what the alchemist, really, the modern day alchemist does. They take they transmute whatever we got going into gold. We take our problems, turn them into gold, or our families, or our challenges, our health issues, and we just turn those into gold.
So now I have a personal question for you.
Yeah.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Oh, at this point, I'd have to say it was a recent insight. Happiness to me is comes as a result of progress. If I'm growing in any one area, whether and especially if I'm helping someone or if I'm growing my own skills or if I'm advancing something, whether it's health, okay, hey, you know what? I walked about a minute faster on that hike today than I did. I celebrate that, and that gives me absolute happiness. Because I found myself during stages of my life where I was waiting for happiness, and one of the most recent insights came when it's like happiness precedes success in any endeavor. So don't wait to be happy. Don't wait for the kids to be grown. Don't wait for the house to be paid off. It's like don't wait for the team to finally start pulling in the right direction. Find happiness right where you are right now. Start there. So those things bring me happiness. So I enjoy getting outside. I do enjoy doing a little strength training. I love reading, growing. I love playing a little classical flamenco guitar in my older age. It's like so that kind of spawned off from my youth, and growing, and of course shared experience with family and friends. So I came back from Iceland just a couple of weeks ago. It's like a week and a half, and I've still got residual cold from that. So sorry if I'm sounding a little gravelly right
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and for
now.
sharing all your wisdom about leadership and life.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure, and a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Kimberly.
Thank you. So I have one last question. You might have kind of already answered it, but I'm going to ask it anyways. You might have to come up with something new. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Wow, best advice. I'd have to say it's Jeff Bezos had one time mentioned, we're all born with gifts. And some people are really good at math, some people are tall, some people are handsome. But he says, don't trade that off. He said, remember, there's a choices after that. And so he says, think about your choices. And that's the thing he said that I want you to think about, like in terms of growth. And so for me, in early 2024, I don't know, every life coach on the planet says, whatever you do, don't set goals. And to me, this is like really wandering aimlessly. It's like along like a ship without a rudder. It's like it's going to get where you want it to go. So I guess for me, because again, one of the things that bring me happiness, of course, is progress and growth in any direction. So I would encourage you to set that goal, lead yourself, find that super compelling goal, shape your habits into something that you're really going to be proud of, and make progress every day. And that will bring you, in my mind, is a recipe for success and happiness and joy in life. Because they're kind of the serendipitous jewels that tend to join us as we grow.
Thank you so much, Paul.
Welcome.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All right.